roughly what would the commercial rate versus just regular farm?
Well, if they're using it solely for their own purpose, it's not assessed. It's not assessed. If
We're
it's just
talking
a single
commercial.
panel sitting out there.
Commercial.
Commercial, yes, he's right, there is a formula that we plug
Would it
in.
double the rate?
It's like 218,000 a megawatt.
That's right there. Yeah.
All right.
I can't remember for 200 megawatts.
It's time for us to start the public hearing. Augie, are we recording?
Oh, we are, yes.
The purpose of the hearing is to address with the public the ordinance governing battery energy storage systems, or BESS as it's referred to. So, Lisa, I'll refer to you. At this point, it doesn't look like we have any public except for Bob and his associates. So the other couple of people are here representing the solar company. So,
Sure. The purpose of creating a battery energy storage system ordinance is to provide structure. The template that we used was provided by an attorney who came and spoke at one of our recent county board officials' state meetings. And we took that and adjusted it, did some localizing, especially since we're a non-zoned county. Also applying some financial options that were within our parameter to determine and adding, customizing some of our emergency services information on here.
okay. Gentlemen, do either one of you want to address the board at this
Sure.
time?
Would love to.
All right.
Okay.
Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ian Evans. I think I've met some of the people in here, but nice to meet everybody. Ian Evans. I'm with IPA Power. We are a utility scale developer out of Austin, Texas. We work all across the country, but my territory specifically is the Midwest. We mainly work on battery energy storage projects, but we also have some projects that have solar, that are mainly solar with battery storage attached to it. It's all sort of one facility. The solar panels charge the batteries. It's not separate interconnection agreements or anything like that. And that's what we're dealing with here. We have a hybrid facility east of town, almost at the state line there. And so I think it's important for us to say, like, I don't come here, to oppose any regulation to battery storage at all. I think it's a good idea to have something, but rather with the hope of having some collaboration on the battery storage ordinance. We recognize the importance of clear and fair guidelines. However, as it's written right now, the ordinance is in effect a moratorium on battery storage for us and any other developer. So, like I said before, we want to work collaboratively with the county to draft something or come up with something that will be workable for all parties, and that's sort of our goal there. I can give you a brief background about IPA Power if it's helpful. Good?
Skip
Okay.
right to the meat of the matter.
All right.
And we can always discuss the other later.
Sure. I just want to highlight just 3 items that reading through the ordinance would be completely unworkable for us, and also, in my opinion, would be unworkable for any developer of battery storage. That is, the first item is section 6, having the interconnection agreement prior to the application. We can go into details. I'll let you guys ask questions if that's how you guys want to handle it, but essentially requiring an interconnection agreement prior to application isn't workable because when you file for an there's a process, right, that you go through with MISO and the transmission service provider. It's called the interconnection process. Anybody who wants to connect an electrical system or generation to the grid has to go through this process. MISO is the regulatory agency that's over the utilities. MISO's charged with studying the grid, similar to street traffic, where you study street traffic, MISO studies the electrical grid. So if you inject 200 megawatts into X substation, what does that mean for the grid writ large? And that could mean that 10 miles down the road, we have to improve a transmission line that we are responsible for the cost of. During that process, there are 3 phases. At each phase, there's increasing security requirements for us. We've just got through phase 1, and we anticipate getting through phase 2 and phase 3 and getting the interconnection agreement by early next year. But at each one of those phases, there's an increasing security requirement to the tune of multiple millions of dollars. And every time you hit that phase, more of that money that you put up in the form of security is at risk, meaning we have to assume we're going to lose that money. Because they want to make sure that you have skin in the game, right? That you're saying you want to build this, they're spending money to develop it, or to study it. And so the reason we come to get the permit application prior to, or that we come to get the permit, special use permit prior to the interconnection agreement is so that we have assurances that we can actually build the project before we're putting this additional security at risk, which is, like I said, to the tune of multiple millions of dollars at risk. So we want to make sure if we're taking that risk that we actually can build the project from a discretionary permit standpoint. I think I spoke with you yesterday and understood your point that like you want some assurances that if you get the permit that we're actually going to interconnect to the grid. I want to reassure everyone here that there is no situation where we build this, put anything in the ground without an interconnection agreement. It can't happen. You cannot inject anything into the grid without an interconnection agreement. And we wouldn't build anything without being able to inject into the grid, obviously, because that's how we make money on the facility. So it's a significant dollar amount, significant percentage of the project that we're putting up at risk. In fact, it's due in the next couple of weeks, the first phase. Recognize that we're going to have to take that risk because we don't have the application yet. But with that being said, before it keeps increasing, we like to have some assurances or make sure that we know that we can build it. Section 7, financial assurances. This is kind of the big one out of the 3, I would say. I believe the language, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe the language was posting security either prior to the permit application or immediately after, to the tune of 110% of the total cost of the project, and holding that until we start construction of the project. Essentially, it sounds like it's an assurance for the county that if you grant the permit, we will actually build it. For some financial, a battery storage facility of this size would be an incremental $150 to $200 million investment on top of the solar facility, which is also $200 million investment. So if you're saying 110% security required, that's a $220 potentially $1 million financial security. Not only is it not possible for us to post a $220 million security, it's also, the carrying cost alone on that to hold it would be $13-14 million, somewhere around there. And then additionally, that's a pretty big risk to take for things that could happen that are out of our control prior to construction. You have supply chain disruptions, which we saw a few years ago. You have all these other things that could happen. We certainly, if we get the permit, intend to build, but I think that's a hard one for us that no developer would be able to post that amount of security. Maybe for a smaller, like community scale, 1 megawatt or something, that might be more doable for a cheaper project, but at this scale, it doesn't work out. Number 3, the liability insurance. This is the last one that's sort of the most main unworkable thing. The amount is probably higher than we're used to at $40 million for the umbrella policy. That's probably fine. We can work with you guys on that. The issue at hand is the ability to increase that at any time for any reason. If you look at it from a lender's standpoint, if we're getting construction financing, if you're a bank, are you gonna lend to someone who there's this open-ended insurance policy where it can change at any point in time? the answer is no, we would not be able to secure lending given an open insurance policy. So like, once the project was built, we would want to make sure that the insurance is sort of set for the life of the project, or at least there's a path to talking about those things, but not just open-ended, because there's just no way that we would be able to do that. Again, I want to reiterate, like, we want to come together with you guys to come with something that allows you to regulate it, but as it's written right now, there just is no way for us to build it, and won't be any way for another developer to build as well. One additional item before I kind of open it up if anybody has any questions is, I think there's value in looking at battery storage as a hybrid facility differently than you look at it as a standalone project. The reason being, our battery storage facility is within the solar footprint, right? So we have a solar project that spans about 2,000 acres. Within that 2,000 acres, there's about 15 acres that has a battery storage facility. And it doesn't even take up all 15 acres. And that's an incremental $150 million to $200 million investment for you guys for something that's already within the footprint of the solar farm. And so I think there's some value in looking at that differently as far as impacts go to the county than something that's standalone. So I want to wrap it up with, I think our ask from you guys is just to table the vote and let's talk more and have these conversations, and we can talk about regulations that make sense and protect the county but also allow for development rather than preclude development. Happy to answer any questions or.
What is the importance of the ordinance? I don't quite understand it. Why is it important to have the ordinance?
Why is it, maybe that's a county question.
Why?
To prevent having the Wild West.
What?
The Wild West. What happens if there are no rules or laws?
Then they can do whatever they want to do.
Okay, well, I just wondered.
Yeah.
I still don't understand it, but that's right.
Anybody else?
How many battery storage pods would there be roughly?
Yeah,
That's come up, it's not really relevant to this, it's just I'd like to
Yeah.
know.
it depends on the technology. I mean, and frankly, it can change year after year. You get better batteries that you don't need quite as many. It's somewhere in the range of like 35 to 40
Pod units.
pod units.
And they're roughly, what, 12 by 8?
Yeah, have you seen the pods that people
I've seen
put in their
picture.
driveway?
I've seen pictures.
Yeah, the exact dimensions again depends, but somewhere around that 8 feet tall, somewhere between like 12 and 15 feet long.
Thanks.
What's the battery makeup? What kind of batteries are they?
We're using lithium iron phosphate, lithium ion batteries, same battery that's in your phone, that's in laptops, that's in
Okay.
Prima Welding.
Is there a fire hazard?
There is certainly risk with any electrical generating facility. I think it's, if you Google battery storage, like the first thing you're gonna see is some of these fires that have happened in California and
Right, that's the one that
Arizona.
comes to mind.
Yeah, Moss Landing, I think is the thing. Moss Landing is an interesting scenario because, let me start with this. Battery storage has grown exponentially over the last 5 years. It's a relatively new technology, but it's grown exponentially. The amount of incidents at battery storage facilities is completely flat. So you've had this growth, but incidence has not grown. And part of that is due to regulations that were put in place in 2019 that did not exist prior to 2019. So Moss Landing, for instance, was built prior to 2019, and to Lisa's point, it was sort of the wild, wild west on battery storage facilities at the federal level. There really were no rules and regulations. They actually built that facility in an old 1950s warehouse, retrofitted from some other energy use that it was being used for. And the problem with building all of the batteries in one facility is if there is an incident, right, not having containerized batteries, if there is an incident with the batteries, well, you're now introducing that to all the batteries for the entire facility as opposed to just this one container, which is why in 2019, federal government fire protection agency passed NFPA 855, which is rules and regulations for how you develop these. And so a lot of those fires that you see are prior to 2019. Is it a risk? Yes, and something that everybody needs to be mindful of. I read through the safety regulations and the battery storage ordinance. I think everything seems reasonable. It's standard practice for us to meet with emergency management, fire department. We actually have a meeting with the emergency management director on Thursday here, and then we have a couple projects that have been approved in Indiana. We draft an emergency response plan. We actually fly in Fire and Risk Alliance as our consultant who comes in and does training with all the fire departments. We do annual training. We walk the site beforehand. The response plan says, this is how we respond to the fire. This is the actual facility. They have keys to the facility. We have 24/7 monitoring. If there's like a heat event or something that we detect back in Austin, then we can actually shut the facility down remotely and keep that from spreading or anything like that. So it's something to think about. Certainly, I don't think it's certainly not likely. It's very rare that happens, but if it happens, it's good to have a plan in place. Which we will have.
So I understand it's, of course, in your best interest to have all those plans. Is the place where this is located, do they have an ordinance?
Is the place,
Where you're talking about coming in and doing all of this work and preparation and informing?
in Indiana? They have ordinances, but they did not require emergency response plans.
Does this require that?
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one question I have, here a few years ago, we had companies in here trying to lease ground for a wind farm. We passed an ordinance back then, and I know the company came back and said, it's too tough, you know, we're out of here. And then, what, a year or so later, the state came in and said, no, this is the rules and regulations
Yeah, the
everybody has
siting
to
law.
follow. Is this on the original solar farm ordinance? Is this set kind of like by the state?
The 2023, which we already had one in 2022.
Right.
I had to redo it for 2023 to meet their requirements where they had requirements.
Okay.
There were some things they didn't have requirements on that we could customize.
Okay. So as the state on these battery storage, has the state set a standard that we have to?
Not yet.
Okay.
There is legislation out there right now, but
Mhm.
nothing's been passed into law. And so, I think to Lisa's point again, it is of benefit to the county to draft something ahead of time and be ready for these types of projects. And all of the developers that come in here, especially us, we would rather work locally than have to go some sort of state route or something like that. And so if, you know, that legislation is out there, but always good to have something in place, you know, prior to that.
So I know one of our concerns when you talked at the meeting was that if we didn't have anything and a company comes in here and applies and then we don't have anything, then there's nothing, it's too late.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I know, you know, you're wanting us to maybe table it, but if we don't at least have something in place to protect us, we can always come back later at some point and, you know, make some adjustments. That would, I guess, a little concern I have, that if we don't have anything, somebody's gonna slip in here and do something and nothing we can do about it.
We could also do a moratorium on this one since, am I wrong, Lisa?
We can do a moratorium because there's not a state
Until we
law
pass a
saying-
new one.
Right, so either we declare a moratorium today, or we pass it with the understanding that I'll go back and do more research. Which basically, my thought is, my first point of research with Phil's assistance is reach out to the person, the attorneys that drafted this, the sample, and ask them why there were some specifics in here. Because the ones that he references, I did not do. I didn't jack them up.
No.
Now, if we don't have anything on the books and we don't declare a moratorium, everything they do is goodwill. So there's no application, so there's no application fee, so anything that we do is on us. It's our cost. There's no decommissioning plan required. There's no emergency services coordination required. And there's no liability insurance required. There's no road use agreement required.
Kansas have a battery storage system at their 1,200 acre solar
Not,
farm?
if they do, it's not in Edgar County.
I know that, yeah. Do they have one?
I don't recall seeing anything there.
I just-
I'd like to broach one other issue with you having to do, so the board's aware of this. The current solar ordinance does not have, or reads, it doesn't have a maximum amount on the application fee. Right now, as I read it, they would have to post one, how much? 200 times 5,000. That
Yeah,
would be
it would be
$1
$1
million.
million in cash,
And
which, yeah, go ahead.
we have a maximum amount on our solar. The proposed ordinance on battery has a maximum amount. I don't know whether we forgot to put,
Wind has one.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, wind, not solar.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
wind has one and battery has one. But for some reason, we did not put a maximum amount on solar. So they would have to, at the time of application, post $1 million. Now, they probably would get a lot of it back. But if you would like to speak to that, you did point that out as a killer.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not ideal for us to post $1 million cash, and I wanna, reiterate that we fully intend to pay for the costs of the county for reviewing the application. That's what we want to do. But my question yesterday was, is $1 million necessary, or is there some sort of cap or something we can put on it? Because I think the $5,000 a megawatt makes sense at the level of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 megawatts, where you're talking about $20,000 or something to review the application. That feels reasonable for a project of that size. When you get up to 200, you're talking about $1 million. That gets a little bit outsized. I don't think you guys anticipate spending $1 million on it, and so my question, obviously that's a cost for us that we have to bake into the project to hold cash, and have to come up with the cash to put it in, and so my ask was if there was any way to sort of have a similar cap as battery storage or wind. I didn't get a chance to look at what the wind cap was, but I know battery storage I think was $250,000.
Yeah. $40, yeah,
It's like $12.50 a megawatt, and
right.
yeah,
Right.
my ask would just something similar, or just a cap in general would be beneficial. It's gonna be pretty hard for most developers to just post $1 million in an FDIC assured account.
Any other questions right now? If you think about it, I'm gonna open it up to the floor here in a minute. We can continue to discuss this. If we don't table it, we can continue to discuss it in the agenda. Okay. Yes, Bob, I was gonna ask, are
Just
there
had a
any?
quick comment, I know you're running a little bit late.
No, you're fine, Bob. I was gonna ask,
Bob Colvin, today I'm wearing my Petco hat, I always wear a hat of somebody, but I'm wearing a Petco hat. And I'm aware of this project, but as I became more aware, shame on me, because when I talked to Jeff, he said, yeah, they're working on this battery ordinance, and the city has had some discussion on solar already. And private person or industry, we're not against any of that. I personally am kind of, but we're not against any of that. It's just technology that's coming. We also control, the city controls a 1.5 mile limit. Petco has been working on, development and housing, childcare, those things. And what the city's interest is, and we've done very little other than discuss, Petco's been approached on their grant for a solar battery project, and we responded a little bit. But we want to be able to control our housing growth areas as a separate from a private house, or somebody putting it in their backyard or on their roof, where we might have housing development. And so I think a major solar field, even within 1.5 miles or right in Paris. Now, we wouldn't ever have an ordinance that was less restrictive from the county, but we might want to be more restrictive, and what that might come in is zoning change. The 1.5 miles is residential. So we're interested in, and again, I'm speaking purely for Petco now and not the city, because the city hasn't advanced that. but we're interested in what's developing around the community and how we can work with developers. Absolutely want, that's our whole purpose is be it more tax money, more people, more jobs in Paris, but we want to control how that's done. So we would ask, and again, my fault for not being up with you guys, and Jeff pointed out, so this is not the first time we've talked about it, and I'm sorry for that. But we certainly are interested in that ordinance. I've got copies of the solar and wind that we've had before and worked with the county on some of that project, but we're very interested in this too. So from that standpoint, again, PEDCO would ask that we had some time to look at it and add to or subtract from or whatever. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thanks, Bob. Is there anybody else in the audience that has a comment on the battery ordinance before I close down the hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing and move on to the regular order. Would you all please rise for the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody here this morning. Hope everybody's enjoying the warmer, sunnier weather. So, while it's here, I'm sure it'll disappear sooner or later for a while. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Bruner,
Here.
Ellis,
Here.
Farnham,
Here.
Lawton,
Here.
Luddington, Patrick,
Here.
and Voigt.
Here. We need to approve the minutes for February 13th, 25 for the regular meeting. Is there any questions or clarifications needed on those minutes? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Andy moves, Russ seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is approved. Claims against the county, you've had those in your possession for a few days. Are there any questions or clarifications needed on the claims? Hearing none, need a motion to approve. Andy moves. Dan seconds. Are there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the county claims signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. It is carried. Next, we come to the county board member claims. You've had those for a couple of days. Is there any questions or clarifications needed? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Dan moves. Andy seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. They are approved. Next, we come to the portion of the meeting for public comment. We ask that you identify yourself and limit your discussion to 5 minutes. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to the highway resolutions. First, a resolution authorizing the county board chairman to sign BLR 05310, LA Fed participation agreement on Conalog Road Camp Bridge. I need, is there any further comment on that? We had a discussion on that on Monday morning. Do you want to describe what just,
It's 104, this is the LA Fed agreement. This, you're authorizing the chairman to enter into an agreement with the Department of Transportation to use 80% federal money for special bridge activity.
Carl moves, Andy seconds. Would you please call the roll?
Bruner,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Farnham,
Yes.
Lawton,
Yes.
and Patrick.
Yes.
It is approved. Next is resolution to appropriate local funds for ISBP CH16 Conalog Road Camp Bridge. Is there any further questions on that? Motion to approve. Carl moves. Dan seconds, and you call the roll.
Brunner,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Farnum,
Yes.
Lawton,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
It is approved. Resolution authorizing the county board chairman to sign a BLR 05530 with Midwest Engineering and Testing, ISVP CH16 Conalog Road, Camp Bridge. Any questions? Carl moves. Andy seconds. Would you please call the roll?
Brunner,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Farnum,
Yes.
Lawton, and Patrick.
Yes.
It is approved. Next, resolution authorizing county board chairman to sign BLR 05530 with Harkey Engineering and Surveying on the Conalog Road, Camp Bridge. Any questions? Hearing none. Carl moves. Need a second. Dan seconds. Would you please call the roll?
Brunner,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Farnum,
Yes.
Lawton,
Yes.
and Patrick.
The next two items, 5 and 6, we're going to skip over those today. There's additional information and input needed on those two items, so we will not be dealing with those two today. Next, we have number 9, approve ordinance for battery energy storage system. Lisa?
Well, we have the two options as we discussed. Either we postpone to a moratorium, which is what we dealt with in wind and solar, means that we would not accept any applications until we have it resolved. The other is that we go ahead and we put this in place and then we vote on it today, and with the commitment to review the concerns stated. So that's the battery. And then, we can't, by law, we cannot do a moratorium on solar, so it stands as written. But I think we should make a commitment to review the concern.
State's Attorney Philip, do you have any thoughts on which would be better, a moratorium or passing the current ordinance? I know you've just gotten into this a little bit, so is one better than the other?
Without knowing the concerns that were brought up at the earlier hearing, I would say the moratorium
Okay,
to allow us to review and then put forward a potential ordinance at that point.
okay. Cleaner?
Yeah.
All right. What's your pleasure, board members?
I agree with the state's attorney.
You want to make a motion for a moratorium and a review of the solar ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have that, Mr. Clerk?
Yes.
And it's a tip. Lisa, he's moved.
I'll second.
You'll second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Or do we need a voice
Let's
vote?
go with the roll call.
Okay, sorry, folks.
All right. Brunner,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Farnum,
Yes.
Lawton,
Yes.
and Patrick.
I'm gonna say yes, but I do want I want some input from
Oh,
some of these guys. I don't want you to think,
Oh, I totally understand,
okay,
totally understand.
no, I think they appreciate what we're doing, actually.
I do, I appreciate
it's
the
not our
route you're
purpose
taking.
to keep somebody from doing what they want. when
Yeah,
they
I've talked to
talk.
poor Ian a whole lot and texted back and forth and emailed. and-
Understood, thank you. Thank
So
you.
we've got good
Yes.
communications, so. All right, so we're moving on. The appointment of Mark Anderson to the Edgar County Board of Health. Any discussion on that?
I have a comment. I know Mark very well from way back, and he works for Temple Funeral Home. I think he'll do an excellent job, so
Okay.
I'd recommend him highly.
Do you want to make the motion
I'll
then?
make a motion.
And Russ seconds. All those in favor of the appointment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Next is appointment of Jacob Jenkins to the 708 Mental Health Board. I did, since this happened when Jacob got promoted and maybe didn't get discussed enough, I talked to the sheriff to make sure that he was aware of it and that he had no problem with Jacob doing this, along with becoming the chief deputy on the 1st of March, or the first day of March. So, a motion to make this appointment. Russ moves, Lisa seconds. Go ahead and call the roll.
Brunner,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Farnum,
Yes.
Lawton,
Yes.
and Patrick.
Yes.
He is approved. Thank you. Next, authorized chairman to send a letter of support to the city of Paris to extend the Jasper Street TIF district for an additional 12 years. Now, Augie, you said you were gonna call Martin to find out what base, where
What
they
that
were.
base level was, yeah, and I've not been able to hear back from him, so I can't give you the exact answer to that. But
I
there is
just
a
didn't
base
know
level.
where they were gonna
Dina might
start.
know.
I'm sorry?
Dean, do you know about what the base amount is for the Jasper Street
Oh,
TIF
gosh.
district? Just off the top of your head?
No,
Did they extend it
No
to stay
idea.
the old rate or the new rate?
well, the TIF money comes from any improvement over and above whatever it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
At beginning of what year?
That it was
That
created.
created.
Okay,
So, for an example, like we've had issues with the Hampton, taking us to state PTAB, all that tax money for that entire hotel goes in TIF district. Districts aren't getting any of that. They're only getting taxes on that little bit of assessment of land that was there originally. So any improvement over and above the base amount is what goes into the TIF fund. County
matter
schools,
when-
they don't get any of that.
so we don't get any of it, nobody gets any of it
No.
except the city.
Goes into
Schools
TIF.
don't get anything?
No.
No. It's
It's
for
just-
economic
Like,
development.
Just again with the Hampton, for an example, I think monies that came off that land were like $40-some that got split between county, school, fire, all those taxing bodies. Any improvement over and above the base level of the year the TIF was created goes into TIF. So all these tax increases, everything, or the factoring that we've been doing, improvements over and above base year go into TIF. Anything new that's built, Taco Bell, Restoration Dental, all those new properties, those tax dollars are all going into TIF.
Even stuff they did 10 years ago then will go.
If it was after the TIF was created, which I'm thinking it was 90-something, but that one was created 99 or something maybe.
See, that's why I brought it to a vote
Mhm.
rather than signing it. Because maybe we ought to explore what the other districts feel like.
Now, there's
That aren't getting
there's
any.
a second TIF district that they came out with,
Right, downtown and then Jasper.
There's 2 tips.
yeah, some years later, they had the
Mhm.
downtown TIF.
Didn't they do something up at Effingham Equity at Horace? Didn't they was that part of the one around the square?
Well, that was an enterprise zone and
Enterprise.
Okay.
I'm not sure
All
that
right.
that went anywhere. I've not
Okay.
ever received anything
And what
about
that creates is where if it costs you $100,000 for material, you didn't have to pay tax. They reduced the tax money on that, the sales tax.
I think
that
there's
goes
like
to the
income
city.
tax incentives or something with that. I'm not sure. Again,
Okay.
I've never been approached by anything for
Okay.
enterprise.
Anyway,
What's the difference about the 12 years? Is that just something they picked out of
no, I imagine that's,
this one?
State law.
Pardon
I
We-
assume the state law,
Okay, I didn't know.
I don't
Seemed
know.
like a long period of time, that's what it was.
yeah, I mean, that's,
Okay.
it's, maybe I'm being too, but it just seems like this just keeps going on and on and on. But you can't imagine the ramifications of it. What do you wanna do?
Do you wanna table it and discuss it? Because I think it came on us pretty quick.
Okay,
I mean, I'd like to know what's involved, I guess, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
we
not-
need to know
I'm
how
not
much.
against it by any means, but I'd like to,
Isn't that on that sheet that I get, that you put out that we were talking about before the meeting? Doesn't it show what the taxes are that go to the TIF districts? Both of them separately, I hope.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. All right. You move to table?
yeah.
Andy moves to table. Lisa seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. All right. Now I'll get I'll work out what we can. Department heads reports. Augie?
Yeah, as of this morning, before the meeting started, we had 50 in-person early votes and 271 mail-in votes. So that's pretty typical for a consolidated election. Questions for me?
I guess not, Augie.
The polling place is the same, okay?
Yes, everything's the same.
Highway Department?
Nothing else, the board has any questions?
Dina, do you wanna squawk a little?
Everyone saw our love letter in the newspaper. I do want to reassure, because of the size of the newsprint sheet and it's folded in half, it's a 12-page, or it's 4 pages per sheet. Our publication came out to be 10 pages. And they wanted us to put an announcement or something on the front page. I said, please don't do that. I'm afraid taxpayers will think I just paid $1,000 for a page to say, notice 24. Please don't do that. They did anyway, but I want to reassure you we are not paying for that. We only paid for those printed pages. The factors ranged from 5% to poor Kansas got a 13% on top of last year's 16%. It was ugly, but yesterday afternoon I received an email from Department of Revenue. Our state multiplier will be a 1, which reassures me the work we did with those township factors was spot on. It's what needed to be happening. I just went over the e-cards sales in the last 2 weeks. I had 3 good ones. They're still in the 27, 24%, when we're supposed to be at 33 and a third. People are still paying outrageous. There isn't a house hardly listed that's not $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, even right here in Paris. I just had a $125,000 little house on Baird Street, 140 out on Curry Drive. So we just cannot keep up with this market explosion. I'm fearful of what's gonna happen in the future. So, another note, we recently, I've already spoke to Jeff about this, we have had a board review member have to resign effective immediately. So with some quorum, we are still gonna meet and do our appeals as they come in, but Jeff will be looking for that replacement for the board review.
Do have some names I'll review with you. Any other questions? Kim?
I do. I have a list with me today too. I just wanted to run by a quick, just fun things, good events that are coming up that are in tune with the community. But on March 27th, we have and I brought a packet of the annual report and a flyer for the board members to take. But March 27th, we have an event with Ross. Champaign County's coming down to give a fantastic presentation. So that's out there. April 8th, we have our medical reserve kickoff at the health department, so we're pretty excited about that. And then May 1st, we are still in the planning phases, but we're gonna have a community-wide baby shower sponsored by Blue Cross Blue Shield. So that's a fun and exciting event for some of our pregnant and new moms. And then I did include flyers, but I just want to draw the attention. I met with Longview Bank, 2 members with Longview Bank yesterday, and they are bringing a remote area medical clinic out to the high school this summer. And it'll be June, I believe, 28th and 29th. And that's a free medical and dental clinic. It's kind of amazing. They're based out of Knoxville, Tennessee, and it's kind of like if you think of Doctors Without Borders, that's kind of the setup. medical and dental professionals. They'll do a whole array of, they bring x-ray machines, operating tables, everything. So they've worked for a long time to get that out in the community, so it's pretty exciting and really will be present throughout that 3-day weekend for the, and again, all free. So that's my update on programs. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions of Kim?
And I'll leave you the flyers and packets for that.
Taylor?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Wyatt, do you have anything to share with us today?
Just a couple things I would say. I appreciate you guys taking on what you took on here today and making sure landowners are taken care of at the end of the day. And I think tabling is probably a good idea. Make sure everybody's T's are crossed and I's are dotted. You all have my phone number if you need expert help. We have home office in Bloomington that's available for anything as well. We can talk to Phil about anything. And then the Allies in Agriculture, which was something that you guys, a resolution you guys had passed 2 years ago when you were reseated, and it is something that we are working on. We had a leadership change and change of board meeting times, so we are still getting that figured out to get to you guys to make sure it's good on your end, and hopefully get it passed sometime here, April or May. So that's all I have.
Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, Philip?
Nothing from the state attorney's office.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. Dan? Committee reports. Dan?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Andy?
You know, just, I talked to the sheriff, 'cause I wasn't in contact with Sycamore about what they did to the boiler, but he said it was fixed the next day, so it's evidently not. I think it was probably compensating water that was dripping.
Have you contacted the other guy not to order the, or cancel his sight glass order?
He'd already ordered it.
I know, but
I know.
can you?
Well, it's not a bad idea to have that on hand, in
Okay.
case that happens next time, so
That's
I
fine.
told him, I said, but if it comes in, we're gonna put it somewhere, so he said that happens on like every couple of years.
Did you
So-
talk anything to the sheriff about coordination?
Okay, yeah, I will,
Okay.
and that's all.
Russ?
I don't have anything.
Carl?
In the last, just in the last week, all this information that's coming out on the solar farm where we're actually seeing that there's maybe some progress on it, but I'm finding out that people out east, no one had a clue about anything for the most part. I went to the township meeting last night, met with them, and they didn't have any idea that anything like this was going on. And I let them know what was going on. I was gonna go, told them I was gonna get more information. I've probably talked to 6, 7, 8 people. I found out that I've had phone calls. Found out that there's 3 different companies that are in here trying to lease ground up and down the state line, from South Park clear up Crispin Way. Surprisingly, it wasn't all negative comments. A lot of them were farmers, but, I think a lot of them say, that this is people's farm ground. If they want to do that, that's their choice, One couple comments were, why don't you go a mile across the state line where you got thousands of acres of coal mine ground, reclaimed ground? Why out east of town, the best farm ground around. And, that's what some of them hate to see, that good productive farm ground being used versus right across, a mile that way, there's a lot of coal mine reclaimed ground, but anyway, I've talked to, fire department people, they're concerned about the emergency response and stuff, so you know, we need to have more discussion on it, and, but
Still digging wells out there?
do what?
Still drilling wells?
I haven't heard anything on the methane wells down further south.
Haven't either.
I mean, I talked, the company that was doing it, I talked to the guy that's in charge of it. He reassured me, and I haven't followed up on it, I need to, you know, they've got all the permits, all this kind of stuff, but
That's
it's
in
something to keep an eye on.
Indiana, right? It's not in, is it in Indiana?
No, it's in Illinois.
Oh, okay,
It's in Illinois, right at the state line,
okay,
because of the Green Valley mine
yeah.
came into Illinois a little bit, you know, years ago,
I
and
just wondered.
that's
I've
where,
heard him more either.
where they're utilizing it. Actually, one of the guys that I talked to there a month ago, I saw him this weekend, but he didn't say anything about it, so. We'll work on it. That's it.
Lisa?
Wanted to let you know that I did volunteer to be part of the Medical Reserve Corps. Talked to Connor about that. There's always somebody needed that knows the business workflow, keep things moving. That would be me. Nobody needs me working on anybody. But, so I think that's a really good thing. It would dovetail in. It's not to take the place of anything else that's already underway or that is already well oiled in a good process in Edgar County for emergencies. Terry Sullivan and I have been having quite a few email conversations with Craig Hall from NextLink, and he's really looking forward to getting more information from you on the tower. They're truly interested. One thing that he had also said, and it's not in this email, it must be in another one, he had talked about their interest in maybe dealing with a generator as well, but we already have a generator there, right?
Is it there yet?
It's not there yet.
Okay. Well, that was just something he had mentioned, so that might not be a need, but he had also stated they are looking to put up some 120-foot towers in other places because they're gonna bid on the next round of broadband expansion. The first round, which we did not get, was for fiber. The second round is for whatever. And so that's where NextLink is interested because theirs would all be fixed wireless. And so, you know, they're looking at utilizing towers that are already here if they can make business agreements, but they're also looking at building some of their own. And so where they put towers may be beneficial to us as far as our emergency services. And I may meet with Craig for lunch today. It kind of depends on what his schedule looks like. Those are the only two new things in addition to all the conversations about solar ordinance and the battery ordinance.
All right. Augie, do you still have a need of a closed session?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is there anything else come before the meeting today? I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session for action on closed session minutes. So, Andy moves, Russ seconds, I didn't even have to ask, so. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We'll be going into closed session, and then coming back out, and then we'll have action on only.
They're sick. Most people are sick.
Okay.
Okay, our last order of business. Well, first of all, we came out of closed session. Now we have an item on the agenda to move. We need a motion to keep our closed sessions closed. Andy moves, Russ seconds. All those, do we need a roll call on that?
Well, we could, yeah.
Okay.
Bruner,
Yes.
Ellis.
Yes.
Farnum.
Yes.
Lawton.
Yes.
And Happy.
Okay, if those carry, we will be keeping all closed minutes sessions closed. no other business to come before the meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Russ moved. Dan, you beat Andy.
I beat him.
Yeah, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are closed,
Adjourned.
adjourned.